Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the Nassau Community College Foundation. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, CEO, keeper of the brand, marketing and digital agency.
We're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly business advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business leaders in the industry.
And helping provide us with business empowerment today is Dr. Maureen Dunne. She's the founder of the Transition to Success Project and CEO of Autism Community Ventures. Welcome to the show, Maureen.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. So happy to be here.
Please give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been a neurodiversity advocate, an expert for over 2 decades. Also have co-founded, advised, led, and invested in technology companies for about 12 years now. As you mentioned, I'm the founder of the Transition to Success Project, which aims to solve the gap problem. I think we'll probably end up talking, more about that in this conversation. But the goal is supporting neurodivergent people at key transition points, and one of the really important transition points is from high school to college. Also, I'm a very active community college advocate as well. I actually got my start at community college. I graduated high school early and then attended an honors program at my local community college, and then went on to be the, as far as I'm aware, the first community college graduate to become a Rhodes Scholar. So I received my PhD from the University of Oxford, and have been working really at the intersections of technology, neurodiversity, and social impact investing. And I'm now actually just last week got reelected to my second term as chair of the board of the same community college I got my start at, and then I'm the president-elect for my state association, and then also on the board at the national level. So I'm pretty active also in community college advocacy as well.
That's great to hear.
Yes.
I mean, it's community college is a vital resource, providing affordable education for folks. You don't have to go completely into debt to get a good quality education. It's an affordable alternative. So glad to hear that you're supporting that, and thank you. Tell us more about your mission with the neurodivergence.
Yeah, I mean, so for those listening that maybe don't have as much of a background in this. So first of all, neurodiversity is a strength-based perspective, and it actually covers a pretty broad range of diagnoses. It could be, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and it's a paradigm that really focuses on the strengths and the talents. But having said that, is that we, even though I think there's a push towards, there's been progress anyway towards developing a truly inclusive society, that there's still, unfortunately, statistics out there, it's up to 85% of at least autistic adults that are still unemployed or underemployed, despite the many talents that they bring to employment. And so what I've been working on is, trying to create new opportunity pathways. And that's, for meaningful work, because there are a number of people that are employed, but, some of them have PhDs from MIT and, are employed in part-time jobs that are not really at their skill level. And so, helping sort of develop those opportunity pathways, transition to success in particular, the focus there is trying to fill in the gaps and support neurodivergent people, especially, in situations where there may be a risk of falling through the cracks, and, transitioning from high school to college is an example. And nationally, there's, statistics out there that roughly 38% of, if we're focused on autism alone, of autistic students complete their college or degree. And so the program, this Transition to Success program has been, this wraparound support model trying to, identify all the different reasons that this population may not complete their degree or certificate. That's not related to necessarily to the academic portion of it. So it could be transportation. It could be the need for, mental health counseling, executive function support, specialized tutoring from tutors that understand the information processing challenges and how to turn strengths into, how to really utilize strengths. And so in our program, at this point, as it grows, probably the performance will go down, but we have close to 100% persistence and completion rate, which is exciting. So that's, my mission is I'm a purpose-driven individual, and my mission is to really, try to do whatever I can to help neurodivergent people lead not just independent lives, but be successful and happy and, and have meaningful work.
And that is so important. There's a great initiative that a lot of companies are now engaging in DEI, and I think that this population is untapped, and it's an area where we can be impactful in the community. There's some great success stories. You ever hear of the company called John's Crazy Socks?
I have.
What an amazing story. And I mean, it's really just the father and the son coming up with this idea to come up with this company because of the concern over when his son was going to kind of age out of the educational programs and what was he going to do. That's to me a clear example of what kind of an impact individuals.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's this is a fantastic initiative. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing as an advisor in special education needs and disability expert? You can talk about the Ego Foundation.
Sure. Actually, some really exciting work. So the LEGO Foundation brought me on as a senior advisor and their special educational needs and disability expert for this new accelerator fund they just launched recently called the Play for All Accelerator, and it's really unique because they're really trying to make a huge social impact at the earliest stages for children, so that they're investing in innovators and new platforms that will hopefully build. The goal is to build a more inclusive world in the future, and so the investments are companies and startups and also nonprofit organizations are eligible as well. But the main, eligibility is basically building, innovations in technology and platforms that are play-based, but that are also just really going to help support and elevate neurodivergent children. And so the first cohort is a $20 million accelerator fund, and the plan going forward is there'll be future cohorts that anyone interested that's listening, any businesses should go to the Play for All website and the LEGO Foundation website, and they can register their interest for a future cohort. But yeah, I'm really excited to be part of that initiative. I think it's very unusual in that, the LEGO Foundation, they get 25% of their revenues from the LEGO Group. And so this is an equity-free grant, which is, extremely unusual. Most investments of this level where there'll be, in June, we'll be selecting 12 startups that get up to $1 million each. And investments at those levels, generally speaking, are from investors that take equity, obviously, from the company. So it's a really amazing program, and I think it's going to drive innovation in this space, which is very exciting.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Dr. Maureen Dunne, founder of the Transition to Success Project and CEO of Autism Community Ventures. My name is Donyshia Boston-Hill, along with Ray Schwetz on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. So, Dr. Maureen, can you please share with us your thoughts on the following? Some community organizations similar to Jack and Jill of America, they now have their We Are One initiative, which is directly impactful with autism. But then we're also seeing in the news that theme parks like American Dream and Nickelodeon, they're now holding sensory days. And that's really becoming popular. So we'd love to get your thoughts on the sensory days and how this is expanding nationwide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that companies are really starting to recognize how important it is to meet the needs of, their neurodivergent children and families that, beyond sort of the mainstream consumers, and that this is a really big population that's been growing and still is, continuing to grow. I mean, in the United States alone, it's 1 in 44 children are on the autism spectrum. And so I think it's exciting and super important, because obviously one of the problems is that neurodivergent autistic children, are often socially excluded. And by having these sensory days, and I know like Chuck E. Cheese, they have a sensory-friendly day, I think, on Sundays. And, Target launched not that long ago a sensory-friendly clothing line. And so I think that it's wonderful because it's so important again to be focused on inclusion, and I think these companies are starting to become more and more aware of that they could be playing this really significant role in making progress in that direction as well, and that there's more and more of their customers too that have a family member. Pretty much everyone at this these days knows someone, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, a family member that's neurodivergent. So,
what would you say is kind of the biggest misconception about the work that you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, there's still a lot of biases out there. And I think, like sometimes when I talk about the work that I'm doing, I think that, occasionally I come across someone who still sees it as purely charity. And I have to really sort of, educate in a way just to really talk about the amazing strengths that neurodivergent people, in terms of innovation, that they need opportunities. It's not, and that those opportunities actually translate to, in many cases, improving even the bottom line of these businesses. In terms of innovation, in terms of having someone who sees things from a different angle or perspective, that's not going to be as prone to, say, groupthink, for instance. And so I think the biggest challenge is sort of getting exposure to the many leaders even that are out there already. Not of all of them have maybe disclosed, but the truth is a lot of our innovators throughout history have credited, have been neurodivergent, and it's, their success has been because of their neurodivergency and not despite of it. And so Richard Branson, he's been very open about his dyslexia and, how that's, in his opinion, really been a huge part of his creativity and his success. But I think, we need a lot more stories out there, to correct some of these, misperceptions or biases.
And you're doing a lot of work in that field. Can you tell us a little bit about your work? You've done free workshops. You've helped immigrant parents with autistic children. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. You brought that up because how I got into technology to begin with was because of that work. So, going back some years, I was working heavily in rural and remote communities. Some of the communities were in New York, especially in the Queens area and in Flushing. But, other areas in the country too, like rural Central Valley in California, I was working in. And one of the things that came up is that even with raising a lot of funds with grants for nonprofits, it was, there just wasn't enough expertise available to keep up with the needs, right, in terms of service delivery. And, then I got really interested in technology and learning to code. And it's not a perfect solution, but it was something that augmented resources and, provided access to expertise that otherwise wouldn't have been available. And so in that need's just gotten much stronger over the years. And then, obviously with the pandemic, that's changed a lot of things as well, where there's been a much bigger demand too for sort of these tech-enabled, remote solutions.
Yes, and this is definitely, we all went through the pandemic and, still living in this, new world of technology. And so how are you networking and infusing technology with some of that networking to increase awareness regarding your initiatives?
Yeah, that's a great question. Since the pandemic started, so before the pandemic, I had to travel a lot more. I still travel, for the work I do, but I've noticed just this trend of there's lots of like global virtual conferences, and those have been, really interesting and helpful. Like for instance, last year I served on the organizing committee directing the Stanford Neurodiversity Summit, which was held virtually, and then I'm on the organizing committee again this year. And last year we had over 5,000 people across the globe registered. And, if that was in person, actually, I think it wouldn't have been the same type of networking experience because there's all these, advocates that are finding each other and all these different stakeholders in the community, whether they're parents or educators or specialists. And so it's been pretty interesting where there's been that sort of shift of even with some conferences being conducted online, and I think that's allowed for more networking even globally in this community. That's maybe was happening to some extent before the pandemic, but I think there's definitely been more of a trend towards collaboration and networking online in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and you're definitely a visionary because you have to pivot really quickly, especially, coming out in this pandemic world. But what do you see as the future of neurodivergence?
Well, I think, we've already seen that I think companies are starting to recognize the many strengths that neurodivergent people bring to the table. I don't think it's been enough. I think we're entering a really interesting period in history where we, if we go back, say, over the last 20 years, specialists were very much valued, and they still will be and always will be. But I think we're kind of entering a period too where a lot of things are shifting so fast that individuals that can kind of think through, like they come up with new ideas and see things through a different perspective, or maybe are really lateral thinkers, which a lot of neurodivergent people are. Many neurodivergent people are sort of brilliant lateral thinkers, and they're living in a linear world, the way I like to describe it. And I think that skill set is very much needed in the economy that we're entering now.
You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio. Our guest today is Dr. Maureen Dunne, founder of the Transition to Success Project and CEO of Autism Community Ventures. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, on the voice of Nass Community College 90.3 WHPC. Maureen, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is certainly one of a kind of a personal nature. Dealing with the schools. I do have a daughter who gets services, and it's amazing. My wife is in special education, and so she kind of knows the landscape, right? And therefore knows how to engage educators to make sure that she advocates and gets our daughter the services that is needed. What advice do you have for parents? Because I just think, like the average parent, like if it was just me, I don't know how I would navigate those services. It's a little scary, a little daunting. What kind of advice would you give to a parent?
Yeah, and I just would add, I'm also the parent of 5-year-old triplets that were born at 28 weeks.
So how do you have the time to do what you do?
I think when you're passionate about, I think when you really care and are mission driven and passionate, you you find the time, right? And yeah, absolutely. And it's not really work. You really want to make an impact, but yeah, I mean, especially my son, he's kind of been going through some struggles at school, and it's been interesting for me then to kind of see this through that perspective as a parent of a teacher not really fully understanding him and his strengths and his neurodivergent tendencies, and so I'm kind of going through that, and I think it's tough, but I think at least there are resources out there. I think every child is really unique, so what's going to be right for one child is not sort of a recipe for all. But I think the really, really important thing, I think, is to early on identify the strengths of that child and encourage those strengths. Like my son is brilliant at art. Like he's just got some really, amazing talent that we don't really know because no one taught him that, but he can, not only recreate scenarios just from his mind in his art, but also come up with, these just very interesting, even, creative, emotional characters and things that, he's not really, there was not really the space or the room in his school to allow him to develop. And so, we've kind of are, putting a lot of effort in proactively, just encouraging, that talent development and that skill development, and as much as possible, also, try coordinating with the school as well. Of course, most schools have a more regimented curriculum and way of doing things. But I think the main thing is, like for him and for all kids that are a bit, unique learners and different, just really, really helping encourage those strengths and those talents, and I think the self-esteem issues are really important, because, some of these kids may not fit in, completely in these environments, but, I want him, for instance, to feel, and all these kids to feel like they're, they do belong, right? And that there are gifts and talents that they have to offer the world, even if, like for my son, for instance, he sometimes gets in trouble because he won't color, perfectly in between the lines, but yet he can draw these amazing pieces of art, which the other kids in the class cannot do. So, I think it's, just identifying the strengths and, really, really encouraging those strengths and motivating these kids to identify themselves with their talent and their strengths.
Absolutely. And you have, personal success stories and how you're impacting your own lives and your own family. And then you're touching the world as well. And I would ask you, what are some of your, biggest accomplishments or things that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I would say, so now that the Transitions to Success Project's been running for some years, I just now seeing some of the students that initially got that either on a scholarship or sponsorship or a participant in the program, seeing how they've evolved and what they've become. I'm just really proud to feel like I played some small role in their success. Last year at the Stanford Summit, we had one of the Transition to Success students present his story, and then we had another present her story, and then there was a parent as well that just talked about it, the importance of it from a parent perspective. And there's been also just several students that, especially through the pandemic, that were very close to dropping out, had mental health challenges and other issues. And I'm just so proud to feel like they've we're able to with the support of this program, we're able to sort of bounce back. And, in one case, there's an example of someone that was struggling, but she's now finishing her degree and transferring from community college on a scholarship. So just very proud of those students and their successes.
What's next for you and your team?
Well, we're currently looking to scale that program nationally because, again, I've just seen how it has transformed lives, and I feel like it's something that could really make a big positive impact. And then also, there's, we're focused on just this gap problem more broadly too. There's when you asked me a little bit about for younger kids and some of the work the Lego Foundation is doing that I'm working with too. They're helping to solve that gap problem as well in the long term by investing in these innovative platforms that should, I believe, make a difference in creating this more inclusive society, strength-based approach in the future for children. But we're focused on, trying to scale the program nationally and also, include some other age groups that also could use these wraparound supports where there's gaps that are and needs that are currently not being met.
Now, where could we find your information? Can you please give us your contact information?
Sure, absolutely. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. But also, if you want to directly email me, my email address is Maureen, just my first name, MAUREEN @autismcommunityventures.org. So that would be the most direct way to reach me.
Excellent. Thank you. And what's the one thought that you want to make sure you leave our listener with today?
I would say just regardless of what business you're in, that I think it's the most significant advice I could give is to become an expert at listening. Listening to all the stakeholders, the customers, everyone that's involved in your business. In my business, for instance, it's not just the parents or the therapist or the teachers, but it's also people with lived experience, to just be a really good listener. And I think that's critical, not only to making a big social impact, but also for a business to be successful.
Thank you so much for the work you do. I think it's so vital that we include everyone and that we benefit from and embrace different ways of thinking. So thank you so much, Dr. Maureen Dunne, founder of the Transition to Success Project and CEO of Autism Community Ventures. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yes, absolutely. It was a great conversation. I'd like to leave you with DB's philosophy. What makes you different is what makes you beautiful.
We want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Donyshia Boston-Hill, your co-host and producers. This is an NCC Foundation production. Visit nccradio.org for more information. We're available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the National Community College Foundation on the voice of National Community College, 90.3 WHPC.